One of the key periods in the history of France is the 12 years period of the Napoleonic Wars in the early 19th century, the origin of which dates back to the French Revolution. France, which was on the verge of disaster after the overthrow of the monarchy, faced resistance from other European powers that wanted to restore the monarchy. From 1803 to 1850, France, under the command of General and the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, was defended against other powers. The military valors shown by Napoleon during these wars captured him in history as one of the greatest generals. The Napoleonic Wars have transformed Europe, and many of their consequences are still visible and felt in our time. Now, let's move through time into the thick of the event.
By the end of the 18th century, our country faced deep economic problems due to involvement in the war for American independence and the lavish lifestyle of the royal family, which was completely unattainable for us. These financial difficulties led to famine, tax increases, and a shortage of basic goods. We ordinary people suffered from this and tried to express our dissatisfaction through protests and strikes. The French Revolution began in 1789 as an attempt to change our situation, but escalated into a bloody struggle, culminating in the execution of King Louis XVI and the Queen Marie Antoinette in 1793.
After the death of the King and Queen of France, many neighbors in Europe, including Great Britain, Prussia, the Austrian Empire, and others, united against France in the First Coalition. The French Revolution changed the rules of the game, allowing people to ascend to high positions not by birth. The French Revolution changed the rules of the game, allowing people to ascend to high positions not by birth but by merit. For me, Napoleon Bonaparte, it was an opportunity to take power into my own hands, despite the fact that I had previously been ignored because of my dysfunctional background. We successfully repelled the attack of the First Coalition, using mass conscription, reforms, and our best generals, including me. Our victory over the Austrian Empire and the signing of the peace treaty in 1797 made me a famous person.
The 9th of November 1799 is the day when General Napoleon Bonaparte changed the course of history. With the support of his loyal officers and soldiers, we witnessed a military coup that led to the dissolution of the Directory and the creation of a consulate. At the beginning, all three councils had equal rights, but power soon concentrated in the hands of Napoleon. It was a time of change and uncertainty, when each of us doubted the future of France.
In 1802, when Napoleon became the first consul for life, he turned his attention to our army. Military service became compulsory for every young man aged 20-25. And the appointments to command positions were based on merit. Napoleon said that each of us carries a marshal's baton in our backpack.
The Battle of Marengo in 1800 brought France a victory over Austria in peace agreement with Britain in 1801, but later in 1805 Napoleon transformed the republic into the Italian kingdom and began to distribute territories dependent on France to his relatives. This action caused the anger of monarchist Europe and led to the formation of the Third Anti-French Coalition, its main members Great Britain, Austria, and Russia. In the Battle of Cape Trafalgar, English Admiral Nelson defeated the Franco-Spanish fleet, although he himself was mortally wounded.
Today, the 2nd of December 1805, I find myself on the battlefield of Austerlitz, where a historic confrontation unfolds between three great empires. The French army under the command of Napoleon I clashes with the Russian army under Alexander I and the Austrian army under Francis II. The morning began with a decisive French attack on the Austrian positions, and the agility and effectiveness of the French troops are impressive. Under Napoleon's command, they secure advantageous positions, using the terrain to their advantage. Napoleon demonstrates an astonishing ability to efficiently command his troops, issuing precise orders and maintaining high morale. His strategic genius and command style become key factors in the course of the battle, and as the day progresses, the French army achieves victories. The losses suffered by the Russian and Austrian forces are significant.
Napoleon's victory at the Battle of Austerlitz strengthened his status as a military strategist and leader, giving him even greater influence in Europe. The Russian-Austrian force in turn suffered significant loss in both number and reputation, which weakened their position both militarily and politically. As a result of the battle, Napoleon's continental system was created aimed at the economic isolation of Great Britain, which entailed various economic and political consequences for many European countries.
At a time when the continental system was fighting for its goals, Napoleon ousted Russia from Poland. We pursued the Russian allies of the Prussians and made peace in Tilsit in 1807. During this period, France's troops also successfully occupied Swedish Pomerania. In 1808, by order of Napoleon and Russian Emperor Alexander I, Sweden was involved in the Finnish War, as a result of which it was divided and the eastern part became part of Russian Empire. While we were engaged in military operations in the north in 1808, France's troops invaded Spain, where Napoleon's brother Joseph was crowned king. However, the Spanish population rebelled against it, starting a real guerrilla war. This began the Iberian War, while in 1809 Austria, supported by Great Britain, tried to take revenge in the War of the Fiscalisation. The French army won the Battle of Wagram in July 1809, but not without defeat of Aspern-Isling.
As a result, Austria lost part of the Polish land in the north and access to the sea in the south, and a huge indemnity was imposed on it. The War of the Fifth Coalition came to an end, but the defeat of Napoleon and the French army at Aspern-Isling inspired the anti-French powers and showed that a military general could be defeated.
By 1811, France and its emperor had reached the peak of their military greatness. Napoleon saw himself not only as the heir of Louis XVI, but also as the successor of the great Charlemagne, who reunited Europe a millennium later. At the time, the only opponents of France were England and Russia. As the new ruler of the Sweden, I have decided to pursue an independent policy. When the French army marched into Russia in 1812, I decided to break off relations with Paris and form the alliance with Alexander I. The Russian emperor even offered me to lead the Russian army, but I politely declined.
The Battle of Borodino, renowned as the Borodino Battle, became an epic clash between the French and Russian armies in 1812. After months of campaigning, Napoleon's French army reached the Borodino field, where it collided with the Russian army led by Kutuzov. The battle itself began on the 7th of September 1812 near the village of Borodino, which stood at the center of the Russian positions. According to Mikhail Kutuzov, this position was one of the best that could be found in unfavorable terrain.
Near Moscow, I stood looking at the battlefield surrounded by my adjutants. My health was not at its best, and for the first time in my life, I could not personally participate in the battle. Nevertheless, my joy was unspeakable. The upcoming battle was the moment of truth that I had been waiting for. My plan was clear: to attack the left flank of the Russian army and break through it, then to strike at the rear of the center and right flank. But Kutuzov turned out to be a worthy opponent. He guessed my intentions and strengthened the left flank, which was commanded by Bagration. The next day we faced strong resistance, and the Russians managed to resist our attacks.
The battle was hellish, blood flowed like a river, and the shells whistled overhead like cursed demons. We French attacked again and again, but the Russians wouldn't yield. Raevsky and his troops held the Kurgan battery to the last, repelling our fiercest assaults. So we managed to capture some of their positions. Kutuzov decided not to risk his complete annihilation of his army and the retreat, leaving us access to Moscow. At first glance, it seemed like a victory. We entered Moscow, but deep down, we knew it was a trap.
When I entered Moscow, I was greeted not by an autumn fall of leaves, but by a hellfire that devoured everything in its path. In this sea of fire, I almost died myself, wandering through the maze of streets. My soldiers who were sent to get supplies either did not return or returned empty-handed. My army was turning into a horde of looters, and the area around Moscow was under the control of partisans. The echo of that battle followed me everywhere, reminding me that my victories were no longer so decisive. Moscow has become a symbol of my defeat. Leaving the capital, I retreated along the destroyed Smolensk road.
The French lost about 30,000 men, while the Russians lost about 45,000. Neither side achieved the objectives set before the battle. Napoleon failed to crush the Russian army, and Kutuzov couldn't prevent the French occupation of Moscow.
After Napoleon's return from Russia in 1812, the situation in France became increasingly tense. The retreat from Russia led to a strong weakening of the French army and the loss of Napoleon's prestige. While he was trying to restore power and revive the army, his opponents in Europe were forming a coalition against France.
In 1814, Allied forces invaded France and Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was temporarily exiled to the island of Elba. However, in 1815, Napoleon escaped from the island and returned to France, where a period known as the 100 Days began. Napoleon gathered an army and faced the coalition force again.
This period ended with Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in June 1815. After that, he was sent into exile to St. Helena, where he died in 1821. France once again became a monarchical state and the Bourbon dynasty was restored to the throne. The Napoleonic Wars have finally come to an end.